It's 6:30. I'd like to start this last business meeting of Urbana School District 116. Roll call, please, Ann.
Member Ogalski?
Here.
Member Orr?
Here.
Member Hasenatka?
Here.
Member Hall is here. Vice President Exum?
Here.
And President Pulaski.
Here, Board Member Carter is homesick this evening. Are there any additions, corrections, or modifications to tonight's agenda? Oh, right. We neglected to put student ambassador report at 9.5, so I've kind of inserted that. Are there any citizens here wishing to make a statement before the board? If so, please fill out a goldenrod form at the back of the room. I'm hearing none. There is no call for an executive session after tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are no accommodations or recognitions tonight and no public hearing or communications. So, Parker, is there a student ambassador's report? Nope. No. All right. So we'll go straight into our first administrative report for school improvement updates. Kimberly.
Okay, as we're getting the presentation set up, just to kind of recap from last week, or a couple weeks ago, tonight we'll have presentations from Urbana Middle School by Mrs. Bretz and Urbana High School with Mr. Nance. Just to start off, you'll see that this mirrors, their plans will mirror our district goals with focusing on those 4 areas of SEL, literacy, math, and equity. And as you hear their updates, you'll also be hearing about the measures that they used as they constructed the goals for their plans. And just a reminder that these are the goals that are from their plans, so you were able to view their plans in entirety, and we'll post those on the website along with all of our plans, and those are working documents. We continue to look at those and update as we get results from the measures that we use for those 4 goals. And so as we, just to recap, with SEL for our district goal, we utilized Panorama, and we're looking for a 7% increase for grades 6 through 12 and 6% for grades 3 through 5, and that's focusing on the topic social awareness. And so for pretty much most of our schools, that's the one area that really showed that we needed to focus on, and that makes sense with coming back from the pandemic and being in person, and that's really important that we focus on that area for our students. And for goal 2, our math goal, we utilized MAP. And by May, when we focus 3 years ahead, our goal is to have 60% of students to reflect the average to above average range. And if you recall, Mrs. Kale Lewandowski had a chart that, and so we're looking at that average to above average range, and all of our principals can access those results as they're looking at that with their goals. And part of the work that we're doing is really looking at our math curriculum, that spirals, and that we're also hitting all the points that we need to. And so we'll be having our math pilot that will be starting next year. And then in the area of literacy, again, we're focusing on hitting that 60% of students, so 20% growth roughly each year. So the first year, and then looking at that average to above average range. And then next year we will be starting with the English Language Arts Committee, where we're really evaluating our resources to strengthen those. We have had, you've heard us talk about letters for professional development. So rather than being reactive to these results, because as you recall, this is based on 2020 norms, we do want to analyze everything that we're using, not just go into reactive mode, but into proactive mode and really examine the resources that are in each of our buildings. Because if we do a lot of separate things in each one of our schools, that's problematic with the mobility that we have. So we really have to make sure that we have some consistency. And that's kind of the word through everything with all of our goals, our systems. Consistency is really, really important. Okay, and then looking at equity and really focusing on cultural responsiveness, that dovetails perfectly with our other goals as we look at dual language in our middle school, our high school, our elementary, but also making sure our schools are culturally responsive, linguistically responsive. And so we are looked at MAP for these results as well, to close the achievement gap and look at 10% or more growth each year for our African American students. And now we're ready for Mrs. Bretz with Urbana Middle School.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Bretz. I am an assistant principal at Urbana Middle School, and I don't know all of you, so good to meet you. I've been in the district for 15 years, so some of you have familiar faces, but not all. I am the representative for the middle school tonight, so I'll be walking you through the goals that we have set for the 22-23 school year. Just as the district has set goals around math, literacy, social emotional learning, and equity, we have also done that and have tried to be consistent with how the district is looking at the data through our unique middle school lens. I'll start with our math and literacy goal together because they're written very similarly. And so I will start just by talking about the two of those together, and then I'll go into our social emotional learning and our equity goals. So as you know, MAP, the measurement of academic progress assessment, was brand new to our district last year, and we didn't really know how our students would handle that and how they would score at that. We didn't have any baseline data to go off of. So now that we have that information, we can set our goals to line up with the district's goals of reaching that 60% threshold in the next 3 years. One of the valuable components to MAP is that it individualizes the assessment to the student's individual progress. So while students are taking the assessment, the test adjusts to match or to meet their level and figure out what level that their true academic achievement level is at by the time they get to the end. And so that's a really valuable component of MAP. And it also allows, it also sets a growth goal for students to meet by their next benchmark. So we want our students to meet those growth goals, but we also overall want students to reach that academic achievement threshold across the board and across the school. So we've set our goal for math and literacy that academic achievement percentile will increase by 15% from the 21-22 school year to the 22-23 spring benchmark. So we want that percentile to increase by 15%, which would look like at each grade level broken down, as you can see, 6th grade to improve to 33%, 7th grade 32%, 8th grade 26%. So what that means is that percentage of students would be scoring in the average to above average range in the academic achievement percentile. So very similarly to literacy, we want our students to grow, or we want our scores to increase by 15% compared to this current school year. But I've also broken that down in the English literacy assessment and the Spanish reading assessment, so you can see the difference there with what those projected goals look like. This current school year for math, we had 15% of our students score in the average to above average range. And for literacy, we had 28% in English reading, meet that average to above average range, and 23% for Spanish reading, meet that average to above average range. So we have rigorous goals to increase 15%, and that will ultimately get us to that 60% tile threshold that the district has set for us in 3 years. That's our goal. So to do that, we are going to be continuing to focus on our instructional practices. Our math department is piloting new math curriculum, and our literacy is going to be a big focus this year with our Avid Instruction. Our Avid program, we have a focus to spend time looking at our reading across all of our department areas and really increasing our reading instruction so that we can improve that across all departments and subjects. We also want to spend some intentional time looking at data. This was really new to us last year, and we didn't really use the data to drive instruction, which that's what it's meant to do. And so we'll be providing intentional time for teachers to do that with some guided protocols for discussion. We'll also be continuing our standards reference learning work, which will ultimately help make our grading practices more equitable and will help our teaching be more focused on not just getting a grade or getting work completed, but true learning and demonstrating understanding of learning. So those are kind of a summary of our math and our literacy goal. Our SEL goal, looking at the Panorama Survey data, we as well are focusing on the area of social awareness, which is really having students develop a sense of empathy and an understanding of how their actions impact others. And this year we scored at 52% of our students had a favorable response of 52% in that area. And so we'd like to increase that to 10% next year and really focus on the importance of the surveyed data. And we'll be utilizing our advisory classes at the middle school. This is something we had years ago, but due to COVID and scheduling, we didn't put that in place this year, and we realized that was a big setback for us. So we'll be putting advisory back in place at the middle school, which is the first 15 or so minutes of the school day. Students are in small groups with one adult, and they're focusing on social emotional learning lessons, social emotional regulation skills. They're focused on organization strategies, they're checking grades, they're checking their planners, and they have a small group that they can develop peer and adult relationships with. So that's going to be a big push for us this year, is bringing advisory back and putting a huge emphasis on the social emotional lessons that will be implemented during that time. And then our last goal is our equity goal. We will continue to develop an equity conscious and restorative school community. And so we have some specific data that is centered around the MAP data again. And we want to close those equity gaps that we're seeing. We have large equity gaps between our white students and our Black and Latino populations. Our white students are scoring on an average of 16% higher than our students of color in math, and 25% higher in reading. And so we want to work on closing those gaps and increasing those scores of our Black and Latino students. And part of that work is going to be tied into our other three goals. By the strategies that we're putting in place with our other three goals, our hope is that that will also help increase the scores of those students. And ultimately, we want those students to feel that they are accepted and have a voice in our school community. Any questions for the middle school?
Board members, any questions? I do have one quick one. So I know you have a strong team at the middle school who's worked on this, but I was wondering if incoming Principal Cooper has had a chance to review this, offer any feedback, because ultimately he's kind of in charge of
Yeah.
trying to reach these goals, right?
Yeah. So we had our school improvement planning day at the end of May, and he was a part of that whole day. And so he worked with our school improvement team to help work on these goals. We also had interviews for our new school improvement team members before the end of the school year, and he was part of all of those interviews. So he got to help choose our new school improvement team and was a part of that day. So yes, he has reviewed this. He just wasn't able to be here today.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but a comment, but I wanted board members to go. So I just wanted to say kudos on bringing back advisory.
Mhm.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
I-
We need it.
Yes, I mean, I've seen the impact of having advisory and what it brings.
Mhm.
I know we haven't really talked about if kids are going to follow the teachers.
Mhm.
That was something that we did before. From 6th grade to 7th grade, they stay with the same advisory. But I think that it'll be interesting to see how the SEL pieces and just all of it, the culture climate pieces, how we're able to reinforce those things through
Mhm.
advisory. So thanks. I know that's huge, trying to
Mhm.
chunk out people. It sounds like it's not a big deal to find 15 minutes in the day, but we know finding 15 minutes in the day is a really big deal. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the effort put behind doing that. So
And the majority of staff is on board for that. They wanted it back. They asked for it back.
Board members, student ambassadors, any more questions? No? Thank you very much, Ms. Bretz.
Good evening. I'm Fresh Principal Nance, proud principal of Urbana High School. And so I'm truly excited about our SIP team. As Natalie mentioned, we had our first gathering at the end of May, and it was very interesting and very, very hopeful with the new minds that we have at the table, mixed with our veteran teachers as well. So a lot of creative juices were flowing, and so we were able to really take a look at our action plans in terms of the SIP plan. And so I'll let you look at the numbers. I typically don't read off the PowerPoint. I typically try to give everyone a principal perspective or overview of how I see us moving forward, building wide. And so my first year as a Urbana High School principal, I really focused on culture and climate, making sure that our kids, our staff, our community felt good when they entered Urbana High School. And so I feel like, at the end of my year, I feel like we're in a really good place for me now to transition, to really start taking a hard look at our instructional practices. And so that's where I'm focused at this year. So we know our incoming freshmen, 8th grade coming into 9th grade, we know we got some work to do with that group, and I'm truly excited about the growth opportunities. And so, I'm talking to my staff and my administrators, our support team, about just wrapping around and being proactive about our approaches instructionally, behaviorally, academically, all the above. And so in terms of our math and literacy, I think I want to focus on actual representation. I think that the more representation we can provide within our instruction, the more culturally responsive teaching practices we can give our teachers, put more tools in their toolbox. I think that our students of all colors, of all races, of all nationalities will be able to really engage and really take a invested effort into their academics. At the high school right now, a lot of our population is very progressive in terms of their own individual lanes. They want to be able. They're asking questions about, why am I in high school? What is this class for? So when we're getting questions like that in terms of the traditional pathways for high school, we really got to take a hard look at ourselves and ask ourselves, are we willing to change with the times to make sure that all students feel accepted in our schools? And it's just not the kids who are most at risk or high hope. It's a lot of our kids who take 5 AP classes and they're coming to me telling me they're stressed out because they're not really sure what to do, and they're taking the classes because they know that's what they're supposed to do, but they're like, Principal Nance, I really want to explore this. And so how do we merge those two worlds together, or 3 worlds together, to make sure that all of our high school students feel truly comfortable, feel truly aware that they got this diploma and they know what it means to them? And so I'm going to be stressing those things to our staff. We have a lot of great partnerships that we're working with outside of the school as well. One of the most interesting partnerships is Jay Bickford from EIU. He's a professor there, and he's come down since March to just observe our teachers, being in our classrooms, being in our spaces, just seeing how we're doing instructionally, asking teachers questions about, what's this unit on, and how does that tie into the real world, and how are we thinking about culturally responsive teaching. And so he's going to continue to come down and to observe our classes and give me feedback, and it's my job to secure buy-in with our staff. So when we look at our actual numbers at the high school level, our map and panorama surveys, we have to secure more buy-in. I'll be honest with you. In the fall, we had a great turnout in terms of our students completing the surveys, and in the spring, it went to half. And as springtime comes, the weather gets nicer. Students are taking up so many classes. They're in so many different sports and other opportunities throughout the school day. The last thing they want to do is another survey. And so I have to figure out with my team, how do we embed operationally the map and panorama surveys so we're really getting quality data. And so we have a few ideas. We're going to do some panorama parties. We'll have a DJ and some food, and we'll try to make it fun for them to complete the surveys, maybe raffle off some prizes if the district wants to help us out with that. But we're really trying to be innovative and creative to make sure that our students not only complete the surveys, but they want to know why. The parents want to know, Principal Nance, why is my son doing this survey, or why does my child have to do this survey? So we want to make sure that from start to finish that our students and our staff and our community know that this data is important for us to do programming, for instruction. So really trying the second year to embed, operationally the survey so it doesn't feel like another thing. It just feels like it's a part of my school day. And that's going to be difficult. It's a challenging thing because, like I said, we sent out 50 emails. We stopped our classes parts of the day. I mean, we tried everything we could do, but, coming off COVID, and I don't want to say that too many times, but, it was just another thing that I don't want to do, Principal Nance. And so, telling somebody, a 15-year-old, they have to do something versus helping them understand why they need to do it for the long run is what we focus on. And so I'm hoping that, this second year, all of our data, I'm going to stand on this data. I got to stand on it, but I really want to make sure in year 2 that when I come back to before you, that I can say, spring and fall, we had similar numbers of surveys completed, not only by our students, but by our families as well. And so that's the part that we're working on. In terms of our SEL, that question, 62% of our students, in terms of social awareness, I don't think our students really know. We know we had the protest, and after that, I really had to sit back and ask myself, okay, what else can I offer and do, because I feel like my student body should know they could come to me because they trust me. And so it was a bit of a setback, but I'm also thinking about reflecting and like, okay, so do I need to give them more education about different things that are happening in the world, because we can't just run off TikTok and social media and then all of a sudden 300 kids are outside. We're not going to do that. So I want to make sure that I'm educating them, giving them the tools in their toolbox, so when they want to come to a principal or assistant principal or support staff and say, hey, this is coming up and I want to support it, how do I go about doing that? And so we're going to be messaging stuff like that out throughout the school year. I also have some partners as well who want to help us with sexual harassment training and education. So they'll be partnering up with our support services team to put those things on. So as we're doing our assemblies, we can always re-engage them and say, hey, look, we haven't forgot that moment. I want to make sure that you understand that we hear you, we see you, believe you, and we want you to know that this is a partnership. This is not a back and forth. It's a circular movement for me when I'm talking to my students, because I want to make sure they know that I'm not just a principal. I'm somebody that wants to make sure that you have the best opportunity to be successful at Urbana High School. In terms of equity, I think the district's already doing a great job. They have the equity audit going. I was a part of that team, and so Dr. Caffey, Dr. Ivy Tatum, and the entire district has really made a concerted effort. I feel real represented in my school, which translates to all my students feeling that way. And so I just appreciate that space that they've given me. And so I'm going to utilize everything I have in my power to make sure that our Black and Latino students feel represented. I feel like if they feel represented, they're going to go to the classes and give a little bit more effort. And if our teachers are culturally responsive, they're going to give a little bit more effort. And then we can start loving each other, start having relationships, and we can really start to see these kids, go from the bottom of the percentile to the top of the percentile. So a lot of work to be done, but I'm confident, and I'm very proud of my first year and everybody supporting me, and continue to do great work for our kids and save lives. So that's where we are.
All right, board members, student ambassadors, any questions?
Yes, thank you very much. And, hey, you made it through this year, so congratulations to you both. Quickly, who is the professor you mentioned from EIU, and what are they observing?
His name is Jay Bigford. So he came with Dr. Franklin and Ms. Simmons. They just brought him to the school just to meet me, and we just connected from our conversations about race and equity, and him being a white man, racially, identifying himself as that was important to me, and then him just wanting to come out and help and really want to provide grants and opportunities for our teachers to really dive into culturally relevant teaching practices. And so several of our teachers have reached out to him over the summer, and so he's volunteering. He has a relationship with his bosses, and so he's able to come down once a week, and we just appreciate him opening his arms and supporting us from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that's wonderful. Is he actually collecting data to use in a study of his own that he's going to share with us, or is he from like the Department of Sociology, or
so he's from the Department of Education.
Okay.
He's a professor there. No data collection, just writing his notes down and then sharing it with me. It's very valuable intel, because I'm coming in, even if I'm not having a clipboard or a tablet, I'm still coming in an evaluative sense, and so teachers are more likely to talk to him about different things. He's probably able to see some of the issues that we're having in classrooms versus me coming in the classroom, and sometimes things are different. And so he's giving me a lot of intel, and once I get it to a place where I'm ready to summarize it, obviously I go through my channels, but yeah, it's very valuable intel he's gotten so far.
Well, I mean, and that's why I ask, is that it's always helpful to have an outsider perspective, not even somebody from necessarily Champaign-Urbana, but someone from another entity to come and look at us and provide us feedback on things we may not have considered. So I'd be interested to hear what kind of things you learned from that, and if you'd come back and tell us next year, it would be great to hear.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else questions? I do have one quick one. I really appreciated what you had to say with regards to students across the board who are struggling with feeling connected to what's going on in their particular classrooms. I was wondering, it sounds to me though that's kind of a role that the counseling department might typically fill. So is there a plan, I guess, to kind of help support the counseling team at the high school to take on some of those tasks? Absolutely.
We have a very strong counseling team led by Ms. Tammy Motley. So she's very connected with her entire team. They're very connected with our administration. And we do have a new assistant principal, Ms. Rankenberger. So it's going to be her challenge to start developing trust amongst the counselors, so they can really start to dive into how we can support students. But the referrals are, they're getting referrals now. So, our student body trusts our counselors. They trust our support staff. And so it's my job to make sure that all of those wheels on the, are functioning, efficiently. And that's something that I'll focus on in year 2.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you, Principal Nance. Back to Kim. Is that the end of the presentation?
No, yes, it is, and just want to thank both of you for being here tonight and for everything that you shared, and have to commend the work with your school improvement teams too. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both. Next up, 10.2 is presentation on Arbor Food Service. Mr. Schmidt.
Okay. Sorry. I'd like to introduce Jonathan Schmidt from Arbor, and he's going to present about how the food service has gone for this past year, and also project our expectations and excitement for next year. Take it away.
John's helping me out with something real quick, so we'll have it up and running in just a minute here. But yes, my name's Jonathan Schmidt. I'm with Arbor Food Service, and I'm the Food Service Director for the Urbana Public Schools. Haven't been here in a while. I noticed quite a few new faces here. It's exciting to see new people and get a chance to present to you once again. So as soon as we get this PowerPoint up, I'll get going. While he's working at, just point out to you as part of the presentation, we do have some food over here you can have here or take home. There's some grab bags. The grab bags do have breakfast items that are prepackaged and snack items that we use in the schools. And then in here is some grab-and-go wraps. They are available at the middle school and the high school daily for students students to choose from. So feel free to help yourself to those.
Thank you. We do, at this point, do you want to flip-flop the two presentations if it's going to take a while? And board members do have the slides in front of them too, so if it's just the slides. Thank you. There we go.
Okay. Sorry about the delay there. Had a little bit updated to the PowerPoint presentation, but first we want to start off with just a look back at the school years from 2019 to 2021. It was a little different those years. We had a national waiver for free meals for all, so students even not in the district could attend our pickup points or our locations, remote locations, and pick up meals. It's a very challenging time with the pandemic meal distribution, but we're proud over that period. We got out over 815,000 free breakfast and lunch served since March of 2020. As you can see from the pictures, it was a little bit different work than we're used to. We had to work on the fly, and we worked well with the district and even with First Student Union as far as getting remote locations set up to get food out to those that were most needy. We started off prepackaged individual meals, and by the end of the years, we were actually doing bulk meals, making it easier and requiring less pickup trips for the families. Moving forward into the current school year, or the past school year, another challenging year, as I think it was for everybody. Everybody had to adapt and improvise as we went along, but it started off a little different with a lot of remote locations within schools for breakfasts and lunches. Urbana High School, the middle school had remote locations where we delivered lunches to the areas where the students would eat to keep them separated so we didn't have overcrowding issues. We did have to do some limited menu items, some single choices where they might have had multiple choices in the past just because of difficulty of getting numbers and figuring out who wants what since they weren't coming through and picking themselves. There was no way to get accurately ask the students what they wanted for lunch and get the numbers back to us in time to be able to make them their meals. But by the end of the year, that had turned around quite a bit. Starting second semester at the middle school, we had the majority of the students coming through the middle school cafeteria. At the high school, they were all coming through the cafeteria once again as well, which allowed us to expand a little bit, add more menu items, add more choices for the students. There was also some challenges this past year, supply chain, I'm sure you guys are aware of. It's affected everything but product availability, but we do have a great team at our corporate office that work on procuring items for us, and if we couldn't get exactly what we needed, we'd try to get the next best thing. We'd try another distributor to see if we could find it, but maybe it was chicken nuggets was switched to popcorn chicken one day, or chicken nuggets and popcorn chicken were gone, it was chicken tenders. There was pizza shortages, there was tray shortages, there was all sorts of shortages, but we managed to work through it, and the most important thing was to get these students fed, and we were happy to do that. Now, the exciting part is looking forward to next year. Hopefully, this will be the first normal year since we've been here, knock on wood on that one. But we're really excited about it. It gives us a chance to do what we really wanted to do from the beginning. And some of the changes you'll see, the elementary schools, there's going to be a renovation at Yankee Ridge at the end of the year. At Yankee Ridge, it should actually say at Thomas Paine. Yankee's already been renovated, but at Thomas Paine at the end of the year, which will give us more kitchen space and newer equipment, which will be very helpful. We are returning to the point of sale that is at all 3 levels. That allows us to track meals to individual students. It's been a little different than the COVID era where it was just tracked by just sheer numbers and tallies. We'll actually be able to track by students. Elementaries will go back to breakfast in classroom, which we've seen a higher amount of breakfast eaten when they do breakfast in classroom. We'll get higher student participation. And they're going to go back to 4 lunch entrees daily in the elementaries. They've been at 2 for the last year. So that's exciting for them to get a little more options, a little more choices. Middle school, additional lines of service will be open. We are going to bring back with the point of sale, we can do a la carte sales again, which the students really miss. And that gives them a chance to pick up still healthy snacks, but healthy chips, healthy Gatorade, stuff like that they can use by putting money on their accounts, on their Skyward accounts, and then through the point of sale, they can use that to purchase these items. We will also have 6 lunch entree choices available daily at the middle school level, giving them lots of opportunities to choose from. One of those you'll see up here is a wrap, which we offer daily, a type of wrap or sandwich for a cold entree in the middle schools. High school, same thing. A la carte sales are back. Point of sale is back. Additional line of service, made to order deli, which is a big favorite among the students. It's where they can create their own deli sandwiches and pick their toppings. And we'll be returning to the full menu offerings there. Some of the items just were very difficult to package in a COVID aspect era as far as packaging stuff like tots and fries in an open air environment where the kids could get it. But all this is very exciting, and we think all of that will greatly increase participation among the students just because they're always yearning for more offerings and more choices. As we move into looking forward to school, we did that. Oh, we're missing a slide. Well, the other things I just want to say, this slide's not in there, it was in the updated slides, but we did do some promotions through the last school year that were very successful that the kids really enjoyed. We did a National Milk Day promotion, which was the first one, something like that's been done around here, School Milk Day, where we brought in orange cream milk and strawberry milk to go along with the chocolate and the regular milk, and the students absolutely loved that. We also used the strawberry milk again on Valentine's Day. The orange cream milk was delicious. It tasted like a dreamsicle. And we did a Valentine's Day slushie, which was a fruit cup slushie, which was still healthy for them, but it tastes just like any other slushie. It had a red and white swirl to it. That was fantastic. During the pandemic period, when we were doing the remote pickups, we didn't get to talk about this because we did a golden ticket promotion, which was very successful, and we had a lot of very happy parents, but that was basically a promotion. They randomly got a golden ticket in their box. They got a popcorn bucket with a family movie night theme where they got games, they got movie theater candies, there was a gift certificate to Amazon, and microwave popcorn and stuff in there, and it was fantastic. It was a lot of fun seeing the smiles on their faces. So that was another fun little presentation we did, and we also did some caterings at the end of this year. We got to cater Carol Baker's going away party, which was exciting for us. We had a great time working with her over the years. She was fantastic to work with, and we look forward to continuing that with Katie. We're off to a good start, and we're looking forward to that as an exciting opportunity. As far as that, is there any questions?
Board members, any questions? Laura?
Yeah, I'm not hearing a lot about alternatives for students that have allergies. So like when I hear milk day, I get a little nervous for
Well-
those of us who don't do the dairy. So
Well-
I'm just kind of curious as a district and how we support and encourage alternatives outside of those days so more of our students can participate if that's important to them.
That's something we could definitely look into. We do have quite a few students with allergies, and we keep a list with these forms come from the doctors of the students that get kept, and we usually will find something to supplement it. So if it's a requested day, if it's a milk day, we may have a juice or a different type of juice, like an apple cherry juice or something that we can sub out for the milk on the student's request. But yeah, I can definitely look into more options if it's a special day as far as a lactose-free or dairy-free item.
So I do have a question. Do the recent changes to the federal programs of free food for all affect the district? Because I know we were early had free meals for all because we had a very high free reduced lunch percentage, but into COVID they made it universal for almost every public school. So and that recently changed. So how does that affect us?
We will go back to what we were before, where we will still be free for all due to the percentage. The other schools will have to go back to where they're charging students. So the other districts that are not in the same percentage will go back to the way they were, where the students will have to pay, and we will stay the same
Okay.
as we were before.
So he's talking about the community CEP.
Yeah.
So we'll go back to our CEP status, which was pre-COVID, where all of our students still get to eat free.
Yeah, and if I remember right, it's been a few years since we were in that program. It was very important for us to have good metrics with regards to the percentage of students who were taking advantage of the program for us to break even on it. So well, I appreciate your presentation today, but going forward next year as things get more normal, for future presentations, I would like to see more participation rate numbers each from at each level as well, please.
Yeah, exactly. And I was looking at participation, but it's really hard to compare it to anything over the last couple of years because it was so different. But I do think going forward that will be very important to see the participation level so we can judge how we are doing on those metrics.
Anyone else? Student ambassador, you want to chime in?
So just to be clear, we're sticking with this company for the oncoming school year? Okay.
A reminder for the public, I think this is, we have one or
Next year's our third year.
next year's our third year, and then, yeah, of the contract, and then it's a 4-year
I
contract,
think
right?
so, 3 years, right?
It's a 3-year contract,
Three-year
okay.
contract.
So next year will be the final year of the contract for it'll go out for bid again sometime during the next academic year. All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for bringing treats too,
Yeah,
John.
definitely thank you for that. 10.3 is Sola Gratia Farm, Tracy Barkley and Valerie Corres.
So Val can't be here tonight, but I'd like to introduce Tracy Barkley. She's the director of Sola Grazia Farm. And we have Jennifer Lawton from CU Public Health District and also our own Hannah Geibs from Yankee Ridge. Take it away.
Good evening. We were trying to remember when we were last here. I think it was last November or December, right after we did the Great Apple Crunch. So happy to be here with you tonight. We've been busy. There's been a lot that's happened since we last met. We had a branding contest that I want to show you what we ended up with. But here are some of the entries. We know that for increased student participation for the Farm to School program that we need to engage students, and they need to be excited and know what's going on and what can be happening with this program. So these are some of the entries before we change the slide that we received. We also have helped install gardens at a number of schools, and then we'll go over tonight what the next steps are for the farm to school program. And we're trying to keep this to 10 minutes because we've seen some of your meetings are extremely late, so we'll be respectful of your time.
Thank you very much.
So next slide, please. All right, I guess it's it. I got it. So the logo contest, we decided pretty late in the season that we could still pull this off, and that it was really important to do so because so much work had been happening at the gardens, and people that have been involved with the gardens, like the students, the teachers, some neighbors know about them, but in terms of general public, passersby, other students, might not be aware of it, so we really wanted to get some signage out there, which really means we needed a logo. So we started a logo contest and developed flyers that went home to all elementary school kids. They were posted in all of them elementary schools, also UMS and UHS. We were offering prizes at both levels. We knew we were going to come out with 2 logos, one at the elementary school level and one at UMS, UHS, so that there'd be representation at both ends of the age spectrum. We ended up getting 94 entries, which I thought was great, considering that we really gave, I don't know, like maybe 2 weeks from posting the flyers to needing them back so that we could make a selection by the end of the semester, get the signs printed, and put them out in the gardens by the end of May. So we had 94, 91 of those were at the elementary school level, so I think that says a lot about the teachers engaging with the students and getting them excited about this. And then we had 3 high school submissions. So what we ended up with was Olivia Gazzola's carrot with a pencil, which we, as soon as it came in, Jennifer and Valerie, Fiona, and I worked together as part of the leadership team, but we were not the judges because we worked so closely with so many students and teachers. But I think as soon as that came in, we were like, oh, I hope that's chosen. Our judges were Mike Roden, who's a local artist, Beth Satterthwaite, who's an art teacher at Leal Elementary School, and Hillary and Anna, who are owners of the Art Coop. So they chose Olivia's logo for the elementary school level, and then UL Lee, who's a 7th grader, or sophomore going into junior year, designed this logo, which, you know, the more you look at it, the more she just has a lot going on there. So it was great to see that came out. And they both won awards. So Olivia received a $50 gift basket of art supplies to the Art Coop, and UL won a pair of AirPods. And we're both very excited about it. And so the logos were used to make signs, which you'll see in later pictures of the gardens. But we have signs now at each of the gardens. At Yankee Ridge, they're in both English and French. And at Leal and Preston Williams, they're in Spanish and English. And then the other schools have at least one side it says, "Welcome to our garden" in English, Spanish, French. And then the back side says, "In our garden, we explore, measure, plan, respect, and have fun." So hopefully that is inclusive and representative of students and engages people as they're passing by some of these gardens. We're hoping that next up we'll be making t-shirts and some other swag to get people a little more involved and excited in the farm school program. So last time we presented, we let you know that we'd applied for implementation grants from USDA. We're still waiting, although it looks good. We were asked to clarify a few questions in our proposal, and we really should hear any day now. Just to remind you, we were asking largely for money for a part-time farm to school coordinator position that would be cited at the high school. We've worked with Angie Franklin to design the job postings. I'm hoping as soon as we hear that we get the funds, then we'll post it and be recruiting for a fall start. That person would be developing educational materials, curriculum kits, helping us plan events, providing garden planning help, and identifying additional professional development opportunities within the farm to school program. We also asked for money for garden leader stipends for all of the teachers that are leading garden efforts at each of the schools, because that work has been happening unfunded for a long time, and that's what we heard through our steering committee from teachers is they want to keep doing this, but it's really hard to if they don't have the financial support. So this grant would fund them. We also would be developing a volunteer program and continuing to work on local procurement for dining services. We also put some effort into compiling a list of 32 other farm to school related grants. So if this doesn't come through, we're ready to start applying for other funds because we know really for this program to have a strong foundation, that farm school coordinator position is really like, that's the next step that needs to be supported. And then we applied for an AmeriCorps Vista member. We were awarded that. So as soon as we hear about the farm school coordinator position, then we'll start recruiting for a full-time 12-month Vista member who would be at Solo Granny Farm, working with the farm to school leadership team, but really supporting the farm to school coordinator at the district level.
Tracy, did every school have a garden leader? Did they actually all have one?
For all of the schools that we are supporting through the Turnkey grant for new gardens, yes.
Good.
And then, teachers came forward and became the garden leaders. And then for the schools that already had gardens, like the high school, yes, there's already garden leader.
Okay.
I think the only school that doesn't have a garden leader or garden team right now is UMS.
Okay. Thanks.
And I think that's, Jennifer's up next.
All right, thank you. So I just want to brief you on the fiscal year grant that we've been working in. Actually ends at the end of this month, but for this past year we've been working with the USDA Edible Gardens Turnkey grant. There are specific grant objectives listed out here, but we applied for funding to work with 4 schools across Urbana School District: Wiley, Dr. Williams, King, and Yankee Ridge. And these schools were identified as Urbana schools that did not have any kind of edible growing space. So the objective that we had was to try to get them on the same playing field as all of the other schools across the district so that the edible grow space and garden component could really be representative and equitable, across the entire district as we move forward into the implementation grant year. Fingers crossed. So the idea is to get everyone really on the same playing field. So at the time of application, those 4 schools did not have any edible growing space previously. So we met with and helped develop garden committees at each of those 4 schools. We met on pretty much a monthly basis with each school garden committee. We helped each program to develop a vision, goals, and objectives unique to each school and what their needs are and what their vision and dreams are for the garden program. We worked to identify federal, state, and local regulations to develop a garden food safety plan, which I'll pass around to you all if you want to take a look at it, as well as to install the grow spaces and develop grow spaces in a safe and appropriate manner. And then probably most importantly here too is developing the sustainability plan so that these efforts are not just for this year. They're going to keep going year after year. Now, getting into the fun stuff here, we wanted to share some pictures of what has actually come at the end of this year. Starting with King, the group that we worked with at King identified that they wanted to install some outdoor raised beds that would be complementary to their pre-existing pollinator garden beds. So if you're familiar with the north side of the building, there's an entrance there. The pollinator beds were there, so these are just about 8 feet away from those beds. So it's all really kind of one outdoor growing space and really impressive when you walk up to that side of the building and see this is really part of King School. So these are very new beds. They were just installed in May, and then the first day of summer school, kids were out there scooping the compost into the beds. They've since planted the beds, and you can see, they're really excited to be getting their hands in the dirt and really participating. And we're just so overjoyed that, these beds have been used immediately. Now the plans moving forward within King is that in the fall, these beds will actually be used in some select classrooms where teachers have shown more interest. So the idea is that it'll start getting integrated with curriculum, and hopefully that will increase in use over time. Wiley has had a similar situation where they had a pre-existing outdoor classroom space. There's a picture there in the middle bottom showing their outdoor classroom space, and then it has a lot of native plants as well. So they decided that they wanted to have a raised bed adjacent to and really connected to this space as well to expand their outdoor classroom to include edible garden. And they have a septagon model there where one section is outcut so that the teacher can kind of stand there and then students can be surrounding to maximize the educational opportunity. And these beds were installed even more recently, just this month, and they've already been used by students at summer school. And similarly to King, the idea is that starting in the fall, they're going to be integrated into specific classrooms that have shown interest and are members of the garden committee at this point, and hopefully that will expand over time. But the idea is it'll start with some first grade classrooms as well as some of the visual arts program. At Dr. Williams, they were kind of a different situation in that when we applied for funding, they did not have any raised beds. And then by the time we got funding, they did have a few raised beds. And they've since also installed a pollinator bed. So they decided to take the route of having this grant support the development of indoor growing space. It's not yet put together. There are some things in flux at that building right now. So these are some pictures of some of the items that we've helped them to acquire. And the idea is that this indoor grow space will help make the garden program accessible year-round, and to maybe some teachers who are not as comfortable taking students outside, they can still have the opportunity for their students to engage and learn about gardening and farm to school. So this could be a great model as other garden programs are growing to be looking at how they can be expanding over time. And now I'm going to hand it over to Hannah. She is one of the teachers at Yankee Ridge who's been a member of the garden team there. Which one? I don't know. I'll turn this on.
Okay, so I really want to give a really big thank you to Solo Gratia Farm and the health department for all the work that they've done. They've really supported us in getting us the materials that we need to build the garden beds and put in the soil and get all the plants that we need. I cannot tell you enough how much the gardens benefit the education of our students here. It's just, like she said, it's such a joy to see them really going out into the beds and watching things grow, and we, me and some of my colleagues have been able already to integrate the garden and sowing seeds and watching seeds grow. We've been able to integrate that into our curriculum, and there's lots of different learning standards, science, math, reading, kids can write about the garden, they can write about their experiences. And one goal that we're starting at Yankee Ridge is we're really focusing on family engagement, and a lot of our families are Congolese and French speaking. And it's been really special. We've been able to have some parents come and visit the garden. And actually just last week, I was out in the garden with one of our parents, and she said, oh, and we're speaking in French. She says, oh, I grew this in Congo, and just, I don't know. It's a wonderful way to connect with families. And it's been such a pleasure to work with you guys. And I really want to say thank you because it definitely benefits our students, and I'm excited for the partnership for the years to come. And so here we have one of our second grade classrooms. They harvested their radishes, and in French it's les radis. So they were very excited about that, and yeah, we just wanted to say thank you. Also, a garden we're hoping that the outdoor space at Yankee Ridge will become, the garden will be shared with a program for children with disabilities. So we're hoping that it will be wheelchair accessible. And it's really something that levels the playing field. Everyone can garden. Everyone, if you struggle with reading, if you struggle with math, you can still help out in the garden. So it's definitely an equity and team building resource. So thank you so much.
few more steps that we'll work on, I think regardless of whether we have the implementation funding or not. We're kind of in pretty far right now. I'm pretty committed to this. But we are going to be continuing to identify additional grant funds. We are, of course, are going to be working to integrate the school gardens into classroom curriculum. We are going to be supporting the other USD schools that were not part of this grant with sustainability plans, developing garden committees, and garden safety manuals. So that includes UHS, UMS, Leal, Thomas Paine when the construction is complete, and then early childhood. We'll continue meeting with Katie Rowland to work on local procurement for school meals and snacks. And it was great to hear from Jonathan that there's a made-to-order deli coming back, because I think that's a great way to get local produce available for the students. There's also, I think, opportunities to improve the wellness policy and to make it more pointed of supporting local and integrating some of the garden produce into snacks and meals. And then we'll continue meeting with our farm school steering committee. So we have 50 members made up of administrators, teachers, students, parents, growers, distributors, and community members. I think that's it. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to entertain them. Thank you.
Board members and student ambassador, any questions? Thank you.
I don't have a question, just thank you. I was so excited when you first came to talk to us, and I'm even more excited now because it's all finally happening. And it looks like, I mean, my fingers are crossed too, but it looks like you're going to get some funding. But all the plates that you had spinning, you know, your last presentation, it sounded like a lot of pie in the sky ideas, but this is showing that it's starting to take shape, and there's plenty of interest in the community and opportunities to grow. So I don't have a question. I'm so grateful, and I was excited when I saw you on the agenda, and also that we were doing the food service. I was thinking, oh gosh, I hope they talk to each other soon. I want to see that happening in our school lunch and breakfast programs. So thank you.
Yes, Jonathan's on the steering committees, and we talk to Arbor Food Management pretty regularly. I think procurement, working the dining services, most people when they think of farm to school, they think of let's improve school lunches, and that's the longest, hardest piece of this. So we are working on it, but we know it's a multi-year plan. But yes, we are. The whole team and steering committee are working with Arbor Food Management as we can.
Well, you're going about it by getting the hearts and minds right now, and I think that the hearts and minds are firmly in it right now, so that if and when we are actually able to partner for food supply, there's going to be so many people who already know what you're doing and are going to think it's a natural progression, and it just, the kids, I think, are going to be number one behind you. So thank you so much for all your hard work.
No, echo those comments. This is absolutely fantastic. It's wonderful seeing this starting to sprout and bloom on its own. And I really appreciate the fact that you're expanding this to all of our buildings. But one thing I noticed, though, was have you approached Gerber at all with regards to this program? Is it something that would work even for that population?
So, do you want to? So Gerber is not part of the National School Lunch Program, and so we have some limitations with the USDA grant on working with Gerber. So we did include them in our initial survey about what farm to school components already exist at Gerber and what they might be interested in. So that conversation has been broached. We've talked about doing some pilot tasting programs and some activities with Gerber. I think we've just had a lot going on, but that is a school that we'd like to work with. It's just a little different on how we have to go about it.
Absolutely.
And actually, it probably will be easier in some ways because of that.
Well, so fantastic work. Thank you very, very, very much.
I just have one more comment, and it's really just kind of planting the seed, so to speak, but the funding that we're seeking from USDA is for 12 months. It's a part-time position, but I think in the long run it is a full-time position. So I do want to just plant the idea that I don't know how it works to create a position within the district, but I anticipate conversations with Katie of what would it look like to establish a full-time farm to school coordinator position if we get it off the ground, part-time, grant supported. Is there a possibility of a grant share in the next year and then possibly having it be a district position, or how would we go about getting that? So I don't know, we can have that conversation later, but I do want to just plant the seed that I don't know that long term it's sustainable to have it always be a grant funded position. Okay.
Right.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
that.
much.
Thank you very much. Next up is our restraint timeout reduction plan. So Todd.
I don't have any good graphics or pictures or great pictures of kids, unfortunately, in my presentation, but I am going to just give you a quick update on a new ISBE requirement that all school districts are engaging in right now, tell you a little bit about what we're doing in regards to this and what we're actually talking about here. John, if you could advance my slide, thank you. So this is one piece of a larger shift that ISBE has undertaken with districts to move away from the use of restraint timeout, isolated timeout that I'm going to refer to as RTO, because that's what ISB calls it as a shorthand. Just a quick back in history in the last couple of years. This started with a series, the impetus behind all of this was a series of articles that came out in November 2019 by ProPublica looking at the use of timeout, isolated timeout restraint in schools and some data on the use and misuse of those across the state. That led to some changes at ISBE, and this is the latest piece, iteration, update that districts need to do. I just want to reiterate, this is not a corrective action plan because Urbana has been identified as doing anything wrong, but this is part of a broader state effort to reduce and eventually eliminate the use of restraint and timeout as an intervention. So, as you see up here, one of the requirements is that all school districts have an oversight team to look to develop plans to reduce and, as I said, eliminate the use of these. Districts are expected to make progress towards a reduction and eventual elimination, as well as total number of students with whom these interventions are used. There are specific steps or action steps set forth in the legislation that I'm going to talk about, and that the plan has to be submitted to ISB budget July 1st, 2022. The team has some specific roles that need to be part of the team. Teachers, paraprofessionals, school services personnel, and administrators. Just so you know, we didn't start this at the last minute. The requirements of this came out in early March of this year. So we have spent the last couple of months pulling this plan together, our initial plan. The team met 3 times this spring, April 6th, April 27th, and May 18th to develop our plan. You can see the team members there. We have a cross-section of staff, administrators, our Gerber building administrators, crisis counselors, paraprofessionals from Gerber, our therapeutic crisis intervention trainers for the district and Gerber. We have a school psychologist as part of our team, a couple of special education teachers, and a school social worker, so we have hit the roles that are required. They also happen to be staff that work with students who may require some of these more restrictive interventions or have historically needed these more restrictive interventions. In terms of what we use to put our plan together, lots of different things, some guidance from ISBE. Our legal counsel, Robin Schwartz, had some ideas on what the plan should look like in terms of formatting. We collaborate with other school districts in terms of how they're drafting their plans, and then I've lost count of how many webinars I've been to about this, 5 or 6 maybe this spring from a variety of our professional organizations. So you can see up here there are 8 specific areas to be addressed by ISBE. I will tell you there are many things that we are already doing up here, especially I would say A through E up here are a lot of what we are already doing and including in the plan. And just as a reminder, every district has to do this, so ISBE is starting with the basics in terms of what school districts are going to be doing. And I'll just very quickly kind of run through these, that we're using positive behavior interventions and supports rather than more restrictive interventions, that we are identifying ways that to de-escalate situations, to avoid the use of RTO, that we utilize crisis intervention, debriefing meetings after crisis events to look at what occurred, making sure that school personnel that working with staff are fully informed of a student's history, including any history of physical or sexual abuse or other relevant medical or mental health information, with those staff that have a legitimate educational need to know with those kind of situations. And then the last 3 are a little bit newer, identifying steps to develop individual plans as required by this new legislation. This last sentence is interesting. Plans should be separate and apart from a student's IEP or 504 plans. I've talked to several people at ISB and other places trying to figure out what that means, because those of us familiar with the IEP process know that students with behavior intervention plans, the proactive and restrictive interventions that we're using are part of that plan. The best that I've heard in terms of explanation for that is to make sure that if a student happens to not have an IEP or 504 plan, that we actually have a plan in place if that student requires more restrictive intervention. So they're trying to be inclusive in terms of making sure that we're planning for all students. And then the last two on there are making sure that parents are aware of the information about the plan, and that we have a process in place for modifying the plan as necessary to meet our goals. Just so you know, this is the state reduction plan up here. 25% reduction in the use of RTO over a 12-month period, which basically goes the 12-month period from July 1st of this last year to June 30th of this year for students experiencing 5 or more instances in a 30-day period. So you all know we don't have any students that are anywhere close to meeting that criteria or near meeting that criteria. We also don't yet have a full year's data for 21-22, since we have a couple more weeks of ESY, extended school year services, for elementary, middle school, high school, and Gerber students. So even though we still have to have a plan, even though we don't hit this criteria, and this is the state plan, and the way it's been explained to me by the state is basically by all school districts making sure they're using things other than RTO and making their systems more robust, it will lead to an overall reduction in the need and, for these kind of interventions. Go ahead and move on. So since we don't, as I said before, have any current or recent instances of students having 5 or more in a 30-day period, we work with some other school districts, and we're all pretty much in the same place in terms of what our goals will be, especially since we don't even have quite a baseline yet, since we don't have a full year's data. But basically what we're going to do in the next year is look at the overall number of incidents requiring use of RTO and looking for a decrease in this upcoming year compared to this year, and also the overall number of students requiring restrictive time RTO to 22 compared to 21-22. So as I said, we'll be reviewing those full year data sets and maybe possibly earlier years for both Gerber School and other district buildings, and make any adjustments and differentiating goal settings early in the next school year. So just highlights. You've gotten a copy of the plan in your board packet, but I'm just hitting the highlights because there's quite a bit of overlap here. So we are going to continue the use of therapeutic crisis intervention for de-escalation. That's something that the district has done for years. It's a strong model of prevention, de-escalation, processing after crisis events happens. We have RTI teams at all of our buildings developing individual plans for students. We're going to continue to build our capacity to conduct functional behavior assessment and behavior intervention plans for our students that we know have behavioral socio-emotional needs. All of the things we're talking about bringing to the district and strengthening in terms of restorative practices. We've talked about bringing back youth mental health first aid training for staff, PD on trauma-informed practices, our teams at buildings, our PBIS teams at the buildings, all support the district collaborative framework in terms of what we're doing. And I just thought I'd put on the bottom there, in some of our school improvement plans, you've heard our administrators talk about self-regulation instruction for all of our students through zones of regulation. And these are all the kind of things that are going to support our work moving forward and that we wove into our plan in terms of what we'll be doing. All right, the last couple of pieces on here are kind of some of the newer pieces. Once approved by ISBE, we'll put the plan on the district website. Typically in a school year, we'll have several special education parent advisory meetings that are, by the way, open to all parents, and all parents are invited to that every year to discuss our plan. We'll record that session, make it available on the Student Services website, so that's another way we'll raise awareness. The RTO reduction team, oversight team, will be meeting at least quarterly next year to review data, make any adjustments to our plans as needed, and we will be providing periodic updates to the board. So that is the end of my brief presentation on this. Like I said, as we get data and flesh this out more, we'll be working more on this, but this is our initial plan that we'll be submitting to ISBE.
Great. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Sorry. Board members, any questions? Ann?
Hi, thanks, Todd, and
Sure.
thanks for, I mean, it sounds like you had a really rush job this semester to get all this stuff done. I'm glad you.
Folding it in with everything else we've done.
Yes. So you mentioned that, the students might be aiming towards, individual plans, and they're separate from 504s and IEPs. Are these, if a student does require a personalized plan, is that something that'll get reviewed every single year, the same as, I'm assuming that the IEPs and 504s get reviewed every year, so
Yeah,
it's
it would
part of
be,
that.
it would be at least on a yearly basis, and basically every time an incident happens as well, it's always processed, reviewed, and adjusted.
And then the parents are involved in the same way as they are with all the other
Yes,
stuff.
they are.
That's right. Well, it's encouraging to hear that we don't fall under the, the list of schools that have had students with so many timeouts
Right.
and so many days out, which is, that sounds good to me, that we're doing things right in the first place. So thank
Sure.
you for being proactive about it.
Yeah, no problem.
Any further questions?
All right, thank
Thanks,
you.
and thanks to you and for your team. It's a lot to
Absolutely.
put together and very, very quickly.
Yes, all
so,
working after school hours, because they're all our people working in buildings with kids during the
Exactly.
day, so.
Yeah, appreciate it. Last up in our administrative reports are our 2022-2023 Board of Education goals. So this is what we did last year. The last meeting of the year, we kind of had a spitballing session to toss out things the board would wish to accomplish during the next academic year. There's a long list of things that we're going to have to do anyway, but these are things that you want to see as study topics as well as things you actually want the board to accomplish over the next year. And then we come back in August. I was hoping, with the board's discretion, that we would kind of come up with a calendar of the things we want to get done and kind of target dates for them, and then actually vote on them and approve them this time around, as opposed to just kind of doing it through conversation. So, anyone like to start? 'Cause I've got like 3 or 4 things otherwise that we've got to do. The first one being we've got to negotiate a new UEA contract, which is going to take a tremendous amount of our time. So I think we're going to be cognizant of that when we're planning for next year, because negotiation is going to take a long time. We're working with the Park District with regards to coming up with a new format for extension of our partnership with the Aquatic Center. That negotiation work is going to take quite a bit of time as well. It's going to be difficult board work. So, anyone else?
I would like to brainstorm and try to make efforts to think about like long-term sustainability of recruitment and retention of board members, and how we can encourage and engage folks and make it feel like it's something that is possible for more than less people, especially considering that all positions are up in the next election. So potentially thinking about, what does that look like? Is there like a mentoring process? If people are interested now, do we have outlets and opportunities for people to fully understand? So things like that, because I think that as an organization, it's helpful to continue to encourage new voices and bring in community members, because that's, ultimately the goal and as far as representation.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I don't know if this is the actual goal that, we would work towards in terms of policy or anything like that, but I wanted to do it this year, but to take tours of the schools, to be in the buildings more as board members, especially as we're working towards alternative education programming that we want to eventually place in the old Comcast building across the street from UMS. I would really like to see how that piece of the puzzle fits in with what we have been doing historically in the past and how we can build on in the future, because I'm really hopeful that we can rely on ourselves more for when we need those extra services, rather than having to ask for other partnerships to fill in gaps. So that's not really a goal. That's not something with a time frame, and unless we want to set a time frame for it. But it's really down to our own schedules and the availability of staff members, and their availability to host us if we want to drop in and take a tour or something. I'm thinking of like the Circle Academy and seeing Gerber, and especially with new board members and things like that. I'd just like us to all be visible members of our different buildings. What are your thoughts about how I could phrase that?
No, I mean, I think we have an opportunity to get into the buildings when we have our roundtables with regard, that's been part of the negotiating process. They're always helpful. We can split the lunch periods up in the buildings into 2 or 3 sections, so we can have potentially up to 4 or 6 board members in a particular show up at a particular luncheon without breaking OMA. Although technically, since it's negotiations, we might not be restrained to that. And that's one of the exemptions to OMA that is any sort of negotiation. So depends on how we do it.
We've always done 2, though.
We have always done 2, because it's typically broader than strictly contract negotiations.
Well, beyond that, though, I just want to be helpful in helping the administration with both the equity audit and with the strategic planning. That's going to take a whole lot of work and a lot of help from all 7 board members in any way that we can. So that's going to fill our hands up for the majority of the year.
Yeah, we've got a pretty full plate.
Yeah.
Already. It's not even August, so. Yeah, and then the dual language decision on top of it too. So we've got I'm hopeful though that we could try to pace ourselves a little, maybe a little more successfully this upcoming academic year than we were able to do this year. Something else I want to do with regards to our superintendent evaluation process is actually set dates for a midterm goal check, and then I'd like to get the superintendent assessment done prior to the seating of new board members, if possible.
Thank you. I can't believe my memory just evaporated from last week. But yes, that is a goal I definitely would like us to do, is to streamline the process better. As we were talking about, just maybe doing more online work and having more help maybe from John Gutzmer and his team for doing things that could be more just streamlined and more intuitive, rather than clunky paper things to get filled out and have to keep reminding people by emails and stuff like that. So any ideas, if we can plan that or talk about it at a future board meeting, depending on the calendar, that would be really helpful. It would dovetail nicely with our mid-year plans, like you just said, if we were going to follow that route.
So that's a lot of to-dos already. Are there particular things, study topics that board members would like to see, particularly newer members, something you'd like to be briefed on, something that would help you in your board service?
So, I mean, we talked about the equity process. I would love to hear at least once before we get the final report. I think that would be really helpful. Another one that I was thinking about is, I mean, it's somewhat related to equity, but the idea of acceleration, which we talked about early on, given the changes at the state level for how we think about advanced placement and acceleration for our students, that could be an interesting study topic, and one I would certainly be interested in hearing more about.
I can share, Kim and I met today about knowing this topic was coming, of the curriculum initiatives. So this year, some of these are time bound, unfortunately. I know we talked last week about trying to spread some of these presentations out so they're not all at the end of the year, but unfortunately some of them are time bound, where that's just going to be the way it happens, in terms of when we have the data and when we have the information. But this year we shared 5 labs info. We brought forward map a couple times. We talked about Panorama, letters, that next year would be year 2 for letters. So we'll get an end of the year synopsis of what that group has been learning and how that training's been going. We'll bring back more information about the math adoption, which is going to be, of course, they're piloting in the beginning of the year, and they'll be selecting a curriculum, so we'll hear more about that in the spring. We brought forward this year education pathway info, so Kim works really closely with that team, so we can bring that earlier in the year, which is what we did this year. And then new things for next year that we didn't have as study topics is you've heard a lot about SBG, or the standard reference learning. So that will be kind of an ongoing conversation. We'll probably, I don't know, since we don't want to have all of these at the end of the year, maybe after the first marking period, we could bring back a standards reference learning kind of check-in. Yep. We've been talking a lot about math, but next year we're starting year one of talking about ELA, so English Language Arts. So there'll be a committee starting with that in year one next year. And then I also had down Brian to do some periodic check-ins on the equity audit process. You won't see the full audit until spring, but there will be opportunities to, maybe at least once or twice come forward with where we are. We already put on her calendar for Winter Institute to join us for Winter Institute to give staff a summary in February of where we are. So she marked that out on her calendar last week when she was with us for the day. So other curriculum related things that I didn't mention, maybe.
Anyone else? This is just an initial spitballing session, so we'll try to firm these up coming in August and try to rank them and try to set them on our calendar so we can try to keep the work balanced throughout the year a little better. But we've got a lot we have to do next year already, so I appreciate this. Thank you very much. It's helpful. Up next are our action items for our consent agenda. We have the minutes for the May 17th, June 7th business meeting, the June 7th study session, and the June 14th special meeting. We have bills and checks for the Ed Fund to the tune of $1.8 million, or $2.8 million, excuse me. O&M fund bills for $58,000, bond and interest fund bills for $139,000, transportation fund bills for $701,000, working cash bonds for $1.6 million, tort for $53,000, life safety levy for $98,000, payroll, salary, and benefits for $4.7 million, Urbana adult education for $200,000. There's a list of personnel items to be requested. Angie, do you have highlight that real quick as part of this?
Yeah, so the regular personnel items, this is the time of year where we have some movement, and the HR office is very busy planning different recruitment fairs and things to get staff in our district. But we also have, in particular, the administrative personnel items. At the last meeting, for some strange reason, I thought that we had already brought Miss Michelle Turner to the board, and so I would like to be able to share just a little bit about her, but then also talk about the assistant principal interviews as well. So this past spring, we had hosted the principal vacancy for King Elementary. Due to a small candidate pool, we kept the position open an additional month prior to interviewing. All staff and all family members of King students were asked to be a part of the interview process in some capacity. On Thursday, May 12th, a team of approximately 20 people, staff and family members, interviewed 2 candidates. All members of the interview team unanimously supported Ms. Michelle Turner to serve as the next leader at King. On Tuesday, May 17th, Michelle was interviewed by the district administrative team and was offered the position. Ms. Turner began her career in education in August 1999 as the Title I Reading Recovery teacher at Leal and at King. From August 2000 to December 2018, she was a classroom teacher who taught various grade levels at King School. Ms. Turner then accepted a position at Booker T. Washington School in Champaign as the Dean of Students. She also taught 5th grade at Garden Hills Elementary in Champaign. Ms. Turner returned to Urbana School District a few years ago to teach 2nd grade at Wiley. Then she returned back to King as the assistant principal in 2020. Ms. Turner was a student at King Elementary when it was a K-6 building, and she also relishes in the fact that her 2 kids have attended King School. She earned all of her college education degrees at the University of Illinois. So the last meeting, the board did approve, but I just wanted to be able to inform the public that we're very excited that she is willing to take on this next challenge. With Ms. Turner being selected as principal, there then became an assistant principal vacancy to fill. On Wednesday, June 15th, there were assistant principal interviews held at King.
The King interview team is recommending Mr. Antoine King, last name is King, to serve as the next assistant principal. Antoine King is a graduate of Urbana High School. At Illinois State University, studied curriculum and instruction for elementary and middle level education. He earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in elementary ed, becoming a first generation college graduate. He began his teaching career on the west side of Chicago, teaching reading to middle school students. He has taught kindergarten through 8th grade in every content area. While teaching, he was accepted to Concordia University in Chicago. At Concordia, he studied education administration and received his Master's of Arts in Education in 2019. Mr. Antoine King is returning home to Urbana from Philadelphia, where he was the instructional coach for middle school teachers. So it is our pleasure to recommend Mr. Antoine King to serve as the next assistant principal at King.
Oh, fantastic.
We think the kids will love that. Mr.
All right.
King at King.
Thank you. 11.4, interfund funds, various transfers from O&M to working cash, IMRF for working cash to tort, for respectively $1,125,000 and $700,000, along with a permanent transfer. Interest earned in working cash and bond interest funds will be permanently transferred to the ed fund. There's pre-approval for June bills. This is something we do every year, where we give authorization to pay our bills for the month of June. We don't typically meet in July, so the copies of these bills will be included in our August agendas. Resolution declaring intent to retain interest earnings as interest and not to accumulate as principal. Katie, you have any background info for that for us?
This is a regular annual action item. It's fairly new, but it was implemented in the last few years, so you'll see it continuously. If we don't do this, then they'll accumulate as principal rather than being allowed to be used elsewhere.
Great. There is. Oh, go ahead. Oh, you would. Oh, sorry. Then there's approval requested to financially support the Self-Made Kings program. I'd like to increase the contribution from $3,000 to $5,000.
So just an additional note, when Mr. Peppers was here, in the presentation we shared that we were going to stay with our original ask from the last couple of years of $3,000. He has had more interest in having more young people participate in this program. So I'm still actively trying to utilize some grant funds so we don't have to increase our participation. However, if those grant funds don't come through, I did want to just have approval from the board that if we do have more young people participate, that the board would approve $5,000 instead of $3,000. But if we can keep it to $3,000, I will. If I can get funding from somewhere else.
Okay. 11.8 is a resolution authorizing and directing the sale or disposal of personal property, different library items mostly. There's a new activity account for Urbana High School baseball, and the administrative personal item that Angie highlighted before. Is there anything that anyone wishes to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved in and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Just to say welcome aboard to our new staff member, especially at the King School, and also even if we don't necessarily need the $3,000 for the Self-Made Kings, I think it's really wise to increase that, and I would love to need to use it because we have an increase in the programming and more students joining on board. So,
Right.
yeah.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Ann.
Member Ogalski.
Yes.
Member Orr.
Yes.
Member Hasanadka.
Yes.
Member Hall votes yes. Vice President Exum.
Yes.
And President Pawlowski.
Yes. Our individual action items, we have gifts. Tatiana Shestova donated $30 to the Evelyn Burnett Underwood Music Assistance Fund. The following donated a total of $900 to the Urbana High School Academic Boosters: Paula Watson, Richard Jane Burkhart, Terry Barbara England, Carolyn Ralph Trimble, Christopher Menard, David O'Brien, M. Irie, Shannon Irish, Ruth Wyman, and Alice Leon Waldoff. Doug Friedel donated a cello and a violin valued at $1,150 to Urbana Middle School. Ellen Elric donated a violin valued at $400 to Urbana Middle School. Is there a motion to accept these gifts?
I move to accept gifts and send thank you notes.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 12.3 is renewal of insurance. Katie?
So we began working with USI in March on an insurance package renewal. We'd previously been with Arthur J. Gallagher. We switched brokers this spring. Before, we were only with Gallagher for a couple of years, and we've historically been with USI for a long period of time before that. So we went ahead back with USI for this year. And we are very, very pleased that we received a competitive quote from a new provider for us for this coming year, because last year, I don't know if you recall, but we even had to have a special board meeting at the end of June because we were having so much trouble getting quotes and rates, and our insurance increased dramatically, which was very difficult for the district. So we're able to actually reduce our rate going forward, and we're also able to have a comprehensive package rather than piecemealing it together with a bunch of different providers, which is kind of what we had to do last year. So the new company that we'll be working with for the majority of our coverage is called Illinois Counties Risk Management Trust Fund, and they service, there's 380 different participating members throughout the state, and over 80 of them are school districts. So I actually have the full list here with the insurance package renewal if you're interested in paging through it. So there was some local ones. I believe Champaign County is one of the other participating districts, and I even received an email from Parkland today wondering if other local entities in our area were participating, because I think they're also interested in joining. So they'll be covering the majority of our package. And then the second page that was attached has the rate comparison. So it has the current rate is in column 1. There's a label at the top of column 1. And you can see the total at the bottom of the package that we paid for last year was $673,000. And this year it'll be just under $500,000. So we're very pleased with that reduction in costs. Even though a couple of the smaller packages have increases overall, some of that's due to increases in payroll. For example, the workers' comp, a lot of that's based on your payroll. So as your payroll goes up, your rates go up. But the actual rates themselves didn't increase very much at all, just not a substantial increase. But overall, I'm very pleased to work with a company like Illinois Counties Management Trust Fund. Sorry, I don't have it memorized yet. Illinois Counties Risk Management Trust. It's a lot more similar to the company that I worked with the Park District. That was it was a pool of similar districts that get together and join. So I think we'll be really pleased with their service. It's a familiar format for me to manage. So I'm pleased to present this package to the board for renewal.
Great. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I guess any questions, board members? The one question I do have though is I know that our deductibles last year were horrendous. How did that compare?
So much better. I'm so glad you asked that. I'm so glad you asked that. So, sorry, before we had what was called retention of, I don't know, $50,000, $100,000 for various policies. The majority of our deductibles are now $1,000.
Oh, wonderful.
So we're very, very pleased. I just think this is just such a great step in the right direction. We didn't even have an umbrella policy last year at all. We're back to having a $10 million umbrella. So there's just so many better things that are going right in the insurance realm this year. So I'm very pleased.
Yeah, that's.
And we did receive quotes. Attached in what was provided to you was quotes from our current providers, and you can see those rates went up again. So if we hadn't gotten a quote from this new company, we would have been in a really tough spot. So if we had renewed with our current companies, it would have been $784,000. So, like I said, I think this is just a really good step in the right direction, and I'm looking forward to working with this company in general for a long period of time. I think it's something that we'll be able to stick with.
Great. All right. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Start it off. Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hasanadka?
Yes.
Member Hall votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski?
Yes, 12.4 is our tentative district budget discussion. This is something that's not required by the state, but something that's in our board policy manual that we do to provide transparency to the public for our ongoing budget process.
Okay. So, and I did print the board policy just in case there was any questions about it, but Paul's correct that the district is required to approve our final budget and submit that to ISBE by the end of September. But this process is just a transparency process so that the board knows that there is a tentative budget in place as we enter a new fiscal year. And it's really just a very rough draft of what the budget will wind up being. There's a lot of unknowns still that will be solidified over the next several months. And when we come back and present again in September, there will be a lot more detail that I'll be able to provide as to specific line items. However, what I did provide was an assumptions document, which I just want to briefly go over some of the main highlights of the largest changes. And that document is typically very similar year to year. It has a lot of the same things. And the reason for that is it's a really good historical information piece that you can kind of tell how you actually built that budget that year. So if you're like, oh wow, what changed? Then you can really refer back. It's a good reference point just for me, and you know, having had the history that Carol left for me of these documents has been helpful for me when putting together the budget for you this year. So just to go over a couple of highlights of the assumptions document. We are expecting, again, a 99% collection rate on our property taxes. There was a little bit of a scare with COVID that people wouldn't be able to pay their property taxes. We might have a higher loss collection rate, but that has not actually happened. It hasn't come to fruition that way. So we're expecting basically our full collection. And the other encouraging news as well on the property tax side, which makes up the majority of our local funding, is that we are expecting a CPI and assuming a CPI increase of 5% for the coming tax year. So the CPI, the change in the CPI was set at 7%, but under PTEL we're limited to the greater of or the lesser of 5%. So that's what we'll be estimating, but it's the highest CPI I've ever seen. I don't know about you. So it's exciting that we're able to see a little bit of new property tax growth. And in addition to that, we touched on it at the TIF Joint Review Board meeting. We will also be expecting the expiration of TIF 2, which is highlighted in bullet point number 2 on the assumptions document. And at that time, any EAV that is in the TIF will come on to our property tax rolls as new property, in addition to any funds that are held in the TIF being dispersed out to the remaining taxing districts. So there's some good revenue news in that realm. In addition, we also know that the state appropriated the $350 million for increases in evidence-based funding. The tier funding has not been released yet, so at this point in time, that's not even in this budget. So you should see some increases to revenue as things get finalized. I did go ahead and finalize our property tax estimates, but the EBF funding will still come in on top of what's in this budget. We also will see some reductions in expenditures, for example, for the RSO expense, which was approved by both the Urbana School Board and the city in the last month or so, and that will provide a reduction in expenditures for the district, because I think we had $355,000 budgeted last year, and it'll go down to $270,000. The bullet points 9 and 10 are really 80 to 90% of all of the district's expenditures are for salaries and benefits. So this is where we spend the most of our time in trying to narrow in on what those estimates will be. However, in the end, for the tentative budget, I put those in 2 account lines. That's it. There's just a lump sum placeholder for salary increases and a lump sum placeholder for insurance increases. And I have, you know, vast spreadsheets where I've done a lot of calculations that went into those lump sums. But in the end, what happens is all of those salaries and benefits get finalized in Skyward. And after all those actuals are known and encumbered in the budget, I am able to go in, clear out the placeholder, and actualize all of those figures in the budget to specific line items in the budget. So you won't see that really level of detail until we get to the final budget process. However, we do know that our insurance costs have skyrocketed this year, and I'm estimating a $1.3 million increase to insurance in the ed fund So that doesn't include increases for grant funding or grants or expenses and things like that where we have other salaries and benefits covered by grants. So it's very intense this year. Normally, our property tax increases that we naturally get every year would cover salary increases, which they would have, but we weren't anticipating to cover a $1.3 million increase in insurance as well. So it was tough, and I had to come together with the team, and we made some decisions to make some cuts preliminarily and we'll see when all the chips fall into place if we can restore anything. But so far, so good. And let's see where I was at with my major changes. Okay. Following that on, where am I? The Indoor Aquatic Center contribution from the school district, which is the contribution to the operations of the district, will be around $250,000 for this coming year. That is the amount of the deficit that facility has after earned revenues are recognized, and both districts split it at 50%. We don't make really any time at all for the tentative budget, making changes to the grant fund, the O&M fund, or the capital projects budgets until closer to the final, because we're doing a lot of those projects over the summer that then roll forward. So what we do for the tentative budget process is we just make a copy of the existing budget and we make it the new budget, and then we just plug in any major changes we're aware of now. And then that's what we then roll forward and try to hone in on before that budget's finalized in September. And so with that, the last couple pages of the assumptions document just has a lot of historical information, not a lot of other changes. So we don't need to discuss any of those line items tonight unless you have specific questions. But I did want to go over briefly the summary report page that looks like a chart. So you'll see right now we're looking at a very small deficit in the education fund of a little over $100,000. But that shouldn't be a cause for concern because, like I said, we still haven't added any of our tier funding for EBF. And in addition to that, just a 1% change in our property tax receipt due to timing alone can make a $300,000 to $400,000 difference year to year in how much revenue we're expecting in one year versus another. So you might see a swing of a deficit followed by a surplus depending on the timing of those property tax receipts. And so that really isn't a concern at all at this point. And then also you might notice with the asterisks next to the construction fund and the facility sales tax fund, there's some large deficit spending in those two funds, but we do have fund balance in both of those funds to cover that. And the reason we have that appropriated is because we know the largest phase of the Thomas Paine construction project will be over this summer and next summer. And so we have those funds appropriated. That's where the construction money is coming from. When you receive the final budget, it'll have the fund balances along with it. And so you'll see that we do have money available to have those expenditures. I guess that got to the end of my highlights, so I'm happy to entertain any specific questions, and I'll try my best to answer them.
Board members, any questions about the tentative budget process?
I do have one. Could you just remind us all, and anybody who came to this discussion late about the ESSER grants and the Ed Fund, you know, when you look on number 17 on your assumptions, we knew that the ESSER funds would run out in 2024, but you know, there's certain things have been beefed up so much that we know that we're gonna have to revert back. And those positions are all aware of that situation, but are there any, can we hope to retain any of them even after ESSER runs out? Like, I'm looking at how many, we've got so many more clinical professionals and nurses, but I mean, is that something that we just have to say goodbye to once the ESSER funding runs out?
So we have about, the ESSER grant, I've been able to spend quite a bit of time with it, and we allocated about $5 million a year out of ESSER funds for 3 years. So this was the first year, next is the second, and then there's one more year after that. And you're right, not only did we offset some of our existing Ed Fund spending and moved it over to ESSER to fund it, but we also then added to it. And so it's definitely something that we're watching closely. I know it's something that Carol has emphasized. Our intention right now would be to reduce force based on attrition or reassignment or things like that, and to maintain our workforce. But in the end, you know, the Ed Fund can only we only have so many property tax dollars, so it's something that we'll look closely at as the time comes. We're lucky that we have that funding still for another 2 years. So, yeah, I agree. I'm glad that you pointed out that observation. I mean, that's part of the reason that I included the FY '22 and '23 amounts, so you could see not only, you know, what we moved from the ed fund, but how it's also grown. So it's something we need to keep an eye on for sure.
Thank you. And part of the reason why it is such a big increase from year to year is we had so many open positions. I mean, we had 3, 4 clinical professionals that we didn't hire, so we didn't spend a big chunk of that money in FY '22 because we didn't
couldn't
have
fill
people.
it,
We
yeah.
couldn't fill those positions.
Yeah.
We had some holes in nursing too throughout the year where we had subs. You know, we had people leave mid-year, so the nursing line looks like we added a whole bunch of nurses,
Sure,
but we really didn't.
But we didn't.
In FY '22, we just weren't fully staffed throughout the whole year, so this number anticipates being fully staffed in both of those positions. So
Well,
that's
thank you
why
for
it's much
explaining that.
higher. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure
So we
there-
didn't like add and
No,
increase those
but it's nice
amounts.
to hear it said out loud so
Yes.
people go, oh my gosh, how many people did we hire? And it's not
Absolutely.
actually the case.
I might comment too that the ESSER grants are also subject to amendment as well. And so this was what was set forth in our original grant application, is we have not done an amendment to this grant. And so if our needs have changed and, you know, we potentially don't need all of this funding in these areas either. And so this may still change as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Is there a motion to receive the tentative budget? This doesn't require approval.
Well, and I was gonna say, and I thought Katie was gonna say it when she mentioned the policy. So really what we're approving tonight is the timeline for the the budget that we have to approve in September. So what you guys are voting on is, yes, our policy says we present a tentative budget, but we really need you to approve our timeline here for the fall.
Yeah, I'm
Thanks.
glad,
budget.
I'm glad you said that, because that actually then gives us the permission to advertise the public notice,
Yes.
et cetera, so.
Thanks for the correction.
Yep,
Is-
thank
is-
you.
Is there a motion to approve this timeline?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a resolution, so let's do a roll call vote. And let's say any further discussion. All right, roll call, please.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hasanatka?
Yes.
Member Hall votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski?
Yes, next up is basically the same thing, but for the Urbana Adult Ed budget.
And Shauna's she couldn't be here tonight, and normally we don't have anyone from Adult Ed here to present the tentative. It really is just a very tentative, just the sheer numbers. So, if there were specific questions, Katie and I are happy to pass those on, to Shauna Shear tomorrow, but otherwise, it's really just the numbers.
So we're planning on doing the hearings, everything on the same nights for Adult Ed?
Yes, we always do, yes. So when we do the September meeting for the district budget, we'll have Shauna here to present the adult ed budget in September.
Okay, board members, any questions? Is there a motion to approve the same timeline for Urbana Adult Ed?
So moved.
Go ahead.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hasanatka?
Yes.
Member Hall votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski?
Yes, 12.6 is our 2022-2023 board meeting schedule.
Okay, so I am going to give a little information before we have more discussion. So if you could pull out if you have your electronic copy or your paper copy, Lori gave you basically what the calendar would look like with no changes. So tonight, this is usually the meeting where we set a final calendar based on our recommendations, and so I do want to highlight a few changes that I want to recommend. So in August, based on our timeline for first and third, we would be meeting the 2nd and the 16th. However, I'd like to recommend that we move our August meeting dates. The 16th is the first day of school for us, and so we all will be starting at about 7 a.m., 6:30 a.m., and so to come and have to sit in a board meeting until, 8 or 9 o'clock at night, it'll be a really long day for us. So my recommendation is, but I know there have been years where the board did not meet for that first meeting in August, and since I've been here, I've recommended that we do have that meeting, mostly because we need to get new hires approved. So we usually have a long list of teaching assistants, support staff positions, sometimes classroom teachers, unfortunately, at the very last minute. So I'd like to recommend we still have 2 meetings in August, but that we just move the 2 meetings from the 2nd and 16th to the 9th and the 23rd. So by meeting on the 9th, it still gives us at least 1 meeting to get a lot of those positions approved. And then we have our second meeting, our business meeting would be on the 23rd. So that's one recommendation. If you look ahead to December, our normal business meeting would fall during winter break. So I'd like to recommend, as we typically do this every year, unfortunately it means 2 back-to-back meetings, but it would at least have our study session and our business meeting prior to the winter break time. So the study session would be on the 6th and the business meeting on the 13th. And then lastly, I just wanted to note, this isn't really a change. I just wanted to say this out loud for March. So spring break falls very nicely. The 14th is our spring break. As you know, we have spring break with the U of I. I'm not recommending a change in the meetings, but I did just want to say out loud, our goal for the March 7th meeting would be to bring most of our reduction in force recommendations, because the meeting on the 21st is exactly 47 days until the last day of school. So we have to do our RIF notifications 45 days before the last day of school. So we're going to work really, really hard to bring you those on March 7th. And then if we have any last minute ones that we need to add, we'll do those on the 21st. And just one more thing of note that isn't really part of the board meeting, but I want it on everybody's radar, is Uhs Graduation. We finalized that. The Thursday, I think, format worked really well. As soon the State Farm Center was already asking us to commit, and we said, no, we want to try Thursday and see how it works before we commit. So we committed about a week or so after graduation. So they're going to continue to give us the discount because Centennial is going to be there. Muhammad is actually moving their graduation to State Farm. So that whole week will be graduation season, I guess, for the State Farm Center. So we'll still continue to be able to get the discount that they gave us this year by not having it on Memorial Day weekend. So we will be having graduation on May 25th, Thursday, May 25th, next year. So those are the changes for the dates, but then I also wanted to talk about time. So every year we talk about the possibility of moving the meeting from 7:30 to 6:30. Our last few meetings, just like tonight, we started at 6:30. So we're moving pretty well through our agenda, and we'll soon be done, and it's 8:30 instead of 9:30. So I just wanted to throw that out as something. I don't know how board members have, if this is fit into your schedule, if you like the 6:30 time start. One thing that we talked about during our discussion last week with the superintendent evaluation and the goals for next year is not just kind of trying to space topics out, but also trying to, have our meetings be timely and efficient. And I know it's really hard when we are here, it's 10 o'clock, we're all brain dead and nobody's really thinking at that point. And so we've talked about kind of not having a formal ending time, but really as an administrative team trying to do our very best if we start at 6:30 that we would be done, before 10 o'clock, always. And so we wouldn't be sitting here at 11 or 12 o'clock. We've had to do that a couple times this year. And public comment, this was what we were going to kind of mention.
Right.
As well.
So during the past year, we've had public comment be emails we read into the record. This isn't something that's traditionally done at open meetings, and we did it in response to the governor's executive order allowing us to meet remotely, which is probably going to expire by July 1 anyway. So we were wondering if what the board's thought was on going back to the way we used to do it, with public comment being in person. at our meetings. So that's a lot to discuss here. So let's tackle these things one at a time. Let's start off with
So dates.
With dates. That's fine. So typically the people have can board members, I guess, make a August 9th and August 23rd meeting? Will we be able to get a quorum? Because in the past we've had issues with people vacations or moving kids to college or whatever, where we wouldn't be able to get a quorum if we met on certain nights in August. I can make those nights myself, but I don't know about other board members.
August 9th, I will be in Florida.
I will also be gone the 9th.
Okay.
I may also be gone.
Ninth,
I'm not
okay.
certain yet, but
So,
Yeah, that
what about so what if we did the 2nd and the 23rd? We can keep the August 2nd meeting, and then, does that work for people? That takes away a week of us getting new hires in, but we can really work hard to get those people through the process and get them here by the 2nd.
I will be gone the 2nd.
You're gone the 2nd, okay?
As far as I know, I'm here. I mean, I think it's most important to just not have you guys come in on the first day of school. And that goes for board members too, who have kids going back to school that day. That's gonna be a
Well, and
crazy
you
night
guys
for
are-
everybody.
Hopefully, we're gonna be going back to a normal opening
Mhm.
day, and you're usually invited to our opening day, which that would make a long day for you as well.
I'm fine with either way. As far as I know, I'm not busy on either the 2nd or the 9th, so.
Robbie, are you available on the 2nd?
Yes, I will be in Urbana that day.
Okay.
So I think we,
Brian?
unsure, but I think I'm here.
Okay, okay.
well, all right, so I think hopefully we can get to 4. So it sounds like the 2nd
The
and
2nd?
and the 23rd are our best current
Okay.
options.
That works for us. December 20th, moving that to
The 13th.
December 13th,
Yep.
which has been our pretty common practice for us. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
And then there's no change for March. Those were just more editorials. I just wanted to share those,
appreciate
share
that.
that out as our goal for March.
So one question, I think October 4th is actually Yom Kippur, and so I don't know if we want to adjust that one as well.
Thank you for noticing that.
Let me see.
I guess would there be an objection to changing that to the 11th?
No.
Just looking, 1 second. Kim, do you see any? Looking ahead. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we want to adjust October so we're not meeting 2 weeks in a row and say the 11th and the 25th?
Well, we'll be
But then
meeting
that we'd be meeting on the
on the
25th
1st.
and 1st. So.
Yeah, so we're stuck with a 1 week
Okay, 11th.
gap no matter what.
All right, we're okay. I'm okay with that. Thank you, Brian, for that addition.
Appreciate it. Any other further comments on the dates?
Well, I just had a quick question. It may not affect our calendar at all.
Hmm?
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Writing down October dates.
October 11th and the 18th. We'll
What-
give you a new version copy of this.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
When's election day for next year, and when would swearing in of new board members happen? Does that affect our dates in any way?
So November
And when
8th
they're
is
sworn in.
election day, and there was recent legislation that allows us, April, what did I say?
Well,
Board
so in
elections.
the,
Board
yeah,
elections.
I mean,
Yes.
let-
Yes.
That's
yes.
it. I'm sorry.
well,
Yes.
right. So
I thought you were talking about
November,
election
but
day.
November 8th is a holiday, so
November
Yeah,
8th
yeah.
it's
is a
important to be
holiday.
cognizant of
Yes,
that.
that's what I had in my head. But there was some recent, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but I could look for it, where we were previously tied to, we had to seat new members within that 30-day time period. That has been extended.
Mhm.
So we don't have that pressure of having
Okay.
to do that by the first week of May like we had before.
Yeah, and
So
that does give us a
it's
little
the
more-
first Tuesday in April is the board election.
April 4th, yes.
So
April 4th.
typically we have a board meeting on election night.
Mhm.
Yep.
Which we always have, yes.
So, That's the election, April 4th, you said.
That's the board election.
Mhm. Board
The-
election,
the-
but we
the- What's
have-
it called, the municipal election?
Mhm. And you said sworn in how many days? 45?
Well, we were previously
It used to be 30.
held to the 30 days, but now we are not. So we can do that at any point in May, I think, if we,
We need to get certified results, and there's been times
Mm-hmm.
when getting certified results in that time period was cutting it close.
Mhm.
So we've got a little more leeway on swearing in now.
And that just, I mean, I'm just thinking about that in terms of what we'd said earlier about superintendent evaluation, you know.
Well, I think we should plan on getting our stuff done by April.
Yeah, I think so. And then also self-evals, I didn't even bring that up earlier. We haven't done board self-evals. I don't know if there's a strict timeline for that, you know, but we should be thinking about it too.
Yeah, we can bring that up again in August when we have our goal-setting meeting. Any more comments about the dates we are actually meeting? Okay, so it sounds like we kind of worked out a tentative schedule we can propose when we make a motion. Let's move to the meeting time. We lost Parker, who I wanted to ask about
Yes.
this.
well, that was another reason why I think moving to the 6:30 time is, I don't know if you guys have noticed, when our ambassadors are here, they typically are never here when we're here. The bigger topics, by 10 o'clock, they're gone. And
Yeah.
so if we start a little earlier, then at least we are able to engage them a little longer. So that's another rationale for moving a little earlier.
My question was about this space. So, just what happens if and when we don't have this space anymore?
Oh, we're gonna
What's
go
the
back to
alternative?
1520.
The middle school.
Okay.
To where we were,
Oh, okay.
when we didn't have the space, yes.
Okay, just
Until
curious
we
what
have
the
something else. Mhm.
tentative plan
What
was
is it?
there.
Yeah, that's a plan.
I'm a pro 6:30, for what it's worth.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, I concur as well. And then the last item is reading submitted emails into public record during public comment. Any more discussion on that? Yeah, well, on just.
Letting that practice sunset with the end of this year, kind of.
I mean, I
I'm
think
in agreement. I mean, I know we did it because of COVID. And, you know, the executive orders, unless they don't expire, you know, they're set to expire. And so unless we have something else
Okay.
happen again that sparks us to do it, I think it's
Yeah.
time to end.
We could always bring it back as well if conditions change or people
Right.
change their mind.
my question was just in rolling that out, you were saying executive order most likely expires in July. We're not meeting, and then it's August, and so I'm wondering, is it when do we plan to then take that away? Because it seems like if we say no now, and then our first meeting, we don't have it, but people aren't totally paying attention.
Well, I think that's why
We
we're
start communicating
we're
now.
communicating it now. Yeah, that's why we're talking about it now. Catherine will make sure that it's
Okay.
noted in the board updates. But the original intent of that was because all boards were basically meeting via Zoom. I mean, everyone was meeting virtually.
Yeah,
So
I mean-
everyone was taking written comments. We just kept the practice going
Yeah,
this year.
I mean, different boards did it differently. We chose to read emails into the record. There are others that offer the ability for citizens to zoom in and give public comment live instead. Okay. Well, I guess people are,
I'm
I'm
fine
not
with
hearing
letting it
anybody who's
sunset.
strongly in favor of keeping things as they are, so
Oh.
I think it's well, in terms of sunsetting the clause.
Oh, yeah, sunset it, yeah, I'm fine with
Okay,
that.
everybody seems to be okay with, and if there's a strong opposition to this, we hear, we can bring it back after our first August meeting. Okay, so
So 3 things in the motion. We
Right.
accept the dates, we accept the time, and we will sunset written public comments
okay,
for next year. I think we're not gonna make a firm guideline, we're gonna hold ourselves accountable to being done before that time. I don't think we were gonna put anything in writing, or, I don't know, Paul, if you wanted to.
well, I mean, the board can always defer a meeting to a specific future date. I mean, we could stop at any point during our meeting and say that we'll reconvene tomorrow at 7:30 or at 6:30 or whatever. So the board already has the power to do this on an as-needed basis. So, I mean, is there a motion, I guess, to approve the amended dates of meetings at 6:30 and also to amend our submitted agendas to remove the public comment via email clause?
So moved.
Second.
I think we can do this with a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Right to sell listing agreement. Katie.
So, unfortunately, we received no bids for the purchase of the old central office. In May, the board set a minimum price of $950,000, and we listed the property for bid in the newspaper for 3 consecutive weeks, and we had no offers at our bid opening, unfortunately. So with that, though, we would like to engage Coldwell Banker, Devonshire Realty, to list the property for sale for us. And the contract that was presented in the packet has gone through legal review and made a few changes. Coldwell Banker accepted all of the suggested changes from Robin Schwartz. And I'm presenting this for board approval. They are suggesting a list price of $1,150,000, and we're excited to work with them.
Is there a motion to approve this listing agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Hasanadka?
Yes.
Member Hall votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski?
Yes. There is no call for any future special, executive, or any other meetings until August. Superintendent's report.
Okay, I'm looking for one little piece of paper here. Here we go. So, before I get into the slides, I did just want, oops, sorry. I reached out to Public Health this morning, and they, since this morning, shared a public health release around vaccination clinics for children aged 6 months to 4 years old. I know we've had a couple inquiries asking if we were going to host a vaccine clinic for the younger, like our early childhood students and some of our younger students. We don't have our nurses in the summertime. We have maybe 2 or 3 nurses that are working on standby for the summer school program, so it would be really difficult for us to run a full-scale clinic. Also, with children this young, just thinking back to how difficult it was for the elementary students, there was lots of screaming, crying, lots of tears. I think we really feel we'll help support families. We reached out to Public Health to get this information. We're going to make it public. They sent a public press release to us late this afternoon. So they're going to be opening up some vaccine clinic availability June 23rd through 24th at their site. We'll put this, I'll share this with Catherine, and we'll get it out to families tomorrow. But we feel like children this young should be going to their pediatricians. We also we'll have appointments at the school-based health center, and we just don't have the staffing to be able to support a vaccine clinic in the summertime. So we'll make sure the information is out to families and that they know where they can go to get vaccines free and how they can make appointments. So I just wanted to put that. It's not in my superintendent report, but I wanted to say it because I literally printed that out right before I came over. So that was sent to me kind of hot off the press this afternoon. So first we have registration is in full swing. How are we doing, John, on registration? You don't know.
I gotta do it again.
Yeah, you gotta register, Paul. This will be the first year people won't be saying, school started, you haven't registered your kids yet, so, because I won't have kids to register this year. But yes, so hopefully everyone is getting their registration and getting their returning students registered. Job fair, we have a job fair on July 26th. hiring for teaching assistants. We'll start promoting this as widely as we can. This is a great time for us to hire lunchroom supervisors, subs, teaching assistants, all those support staff positions that we so desperately need, crossing guards, all of the above, basically. So if you know people, please encourage them. We'll have principals. This is when our elementary people come back this week, our 10-month staff. So hopefully we'll have some on-the-spot interviewing happening at Urbana Middle School on July 26th. Summer meals are in full swing, so we've been talking about that quite a bit. You could click, John. And physicals, I just mentioned the school-based health centers, so they are aggressively encouraging families to get their appointments set up because our kindergartners, sixth graders, and ninth graders definitely need those physicals and dental exams before they can start school. The adult ed mural, so this is exciting. So as you know, we partner with the City of Urbana, the arts program. So the artist Rafael Blanco, we've been working with him for several months. He was initially going to do a mural here off of Griggs on this building, but we are hopefully not going to be here much longer. So we've been meeting with Rafael about the possibility of him doing a mural on one of the Comcast sites buildings. Actually, it's going to be facing Vine Street on the drugstore side of the building. So Randy, who I should have mentioned, Randy's wife was sick, so he's at home with her tonight. He's been working with Shauna Shear and Rachel from the City of Urbana to get that going. So we'll, as that project comes to fruition, we'll be sure to share pictures and progress on that. And upcoming dates, we're really excited. Jetty Roads Day is this Saturday. Jetty Roads was a community advocate and activist in the King neighborhood for many, many years, and her family has kept her legacy alive through Jetty Roads Day. And so Jetty Roads is a partnership with Urbana Park District. So we will have a table out at Jetty Roads from 12 to 4, middle school, high school, PTSA will. It's just a great family event day. There's food. Our own Principal Nance is the MC, and there's usually live entertainment, so it's a fun day. Hopefully it won't be 100 degrees, but we invite you to come out and be there with us. Many of our administrators will be there, our SROs will be there, so we'll be there to just kind of greet families. I mentioned the support staff, and again, new family registration is July 27th and 28th, but we want those returning families getting registered right now. That is it.
FOIAs?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So all FOIAs have been completed and fulfilled. Andrew Bambrick, email address for Tori Exum, Laura Orr, Ravi Hasanaka, Brian Ogalski. Jeff Delasio, reports of any items, and Jeff Delasio doesn't say, but he is the editor from the News Gazette. Reports of any items confiscated from students, staff, or visitors after passing through metal detectors since the start of the school year at Urbana High School. And those have all been completed and fulfilled. Thanks, Paul.
Any board reports?
I just have a quick question. Our email addresses are easily accessible
They're
still?
on the website.
Okay, I was just making sure that they're there.
Yep, they are on the website.
I have a quick one. I don't know if you guys have seen in your in our ISB and our district emails, but if you're members of the ISB, there is a summer series that has been introduced. It's called the Equity Journey, and it's a series of webinars that we can all take part in as board members that look at different areas of equity and inclusion. And I think there's like 4 or 5 different webinars. They're all at 6:30. Unfortunately, a couple of them towards the end might coincide with some of our board meetings. But you can either take part in them live, it's on the night at 6:30, or you can watch the webinar after it's been archived. I emailed earlier to find out about those ones that we might be missing, and found out from Dr. Hall's office that if you attend them all live, you can get a point on the board recognition program, which is something that you probably all remember learning about when you first joined the board. I know Tori and Paul and Brenda, of course, knows about this, but it's just a part of the series of ongoing education for ourselves. It's a great chance to virtually network with other board members across the state and programs that they've instituted in their school districts, and to ask questions about our own district or ways we can implement. So I would just encourage everybody to maybe try and sign up for one or two of them. And if you're like me and sometimes forget that it happened, it's a nice thing to listen to in the background as you're working throughout the day and catch up on points. So just want to let people know about that.
Any other board reports? I would just like to offer my appreciation to the six of you for all of your work during this academic year. I know it's not always pretty seeing how the sausage is made, and you guys have put in a ton of time outside these meetings as well. But I just want to express that your efforts and your work here has been really, really appreciated. Thank you all. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? See you in August.